selfdefenseradio.net to check out all the other great shows. Hi, this is Matt from Geeks, Gadgets, and Guns, and you're listening to another fantastic show on the Self-Defense Radio Network. Visit selfdefenseradio.net to check out all the other great shows.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, and welcome to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. We're recording this one on Monday, April the 6th, 2020. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morse, and on tonight's show, we'll talk with Alan Gottlieb about the abuse of gun owners during a quarantine.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about further updates on the Wuhan virus.
Go, Gary.
Go, Amanda.
I have the wrong show notes.
So I'm not Gary Doherty, but one of our DGUs is that we have a good guy with a gun. So climb aboard,
Strap in,
and hang on.
Episode 537 of the Polite Society podcast starts right now. If it's Monday and it's 6 o'clock Central Time, this must be the Polite Society podcast. Rob, what have you been up to since last Monday, man?
I was a guest on Dan Waz's new radio show, Good Gun, Bad Guy. I didn't get invited on the first episode, but I was on the second. Dan's doing great. It was great fun. I also recorded another episode of Self-Defense Gun Stories. Other than that, it's an ordinary week in Quarantineville. Dry practice carried every day. You know, being at home like this, you can do a lot of dry practice. John?
I agree. I've been dry firing my revolvers on my coronavirus dry fire target. The target is sized to represent 7 through 25 yards, but you actually just stand 4 yards away from it. You can see the target on my blog and download your own copy. Other than that, I've been working from home. And actually, I think I've been working more and harder than when I had to go on site. So there is that. Oh, and congratulations, Rob. Rob was quoted extensively in a story in Vice.
I don't know who's reading that, but somebody was. Thank you, John.
Somebody was.
At least one person did. John did.
And so I'll pass it to Gary.
Thank you. Kind of like everybody else, working from home. Not much of a change for me. Like everybody knows, I already work from home when I'm not training classes, so carrying every day in the house. Hope y'all are too. Tracy?
I've been up to nothing except for working from home on special projects for the Texas Cardiac Arrhythmia Research Foundation. Belle, what's going on with you?
Good. We're starting to sound like a broken record. Working from home. For me, it's pretty impactful. I'm struggling to keep students interested in hanging on to reschedule and then reschedule again, and then reschedule again in hopes that there's something for everyone to come back to when this is all over. How about you, Dana? You got a happier story for me?
Mute, partner.
Is Dana? I don't even see Dana on the call. Is he here?
His computer crashed.
I saw him on the list. I'm just following directions.
Okay.
How about Amanda?
Yeah, how about we speak to Amanda?
Okay, well, I've been working, and my job has been deemed a critical safety infrastructure job. So sometimes I'm at work, sometimes I'm trying to stay as much social distancing as possible. So I'm kind of a little bit of both. But I've been having some really good guests on my syndicated radio show, Eye on the Target Radio, because I've got some time to reach out and contact people. It's been kind of cool. And I'm writing a book. And I have to say, as I sit here and work on this, for those of you guys who can write, or more so, those of you who can spell, I just have to say kudos to you. So, Paul, what about you and Susan?
Well, Susan, I'm going to let you go first. What's been up with you this week?
I'm working. working. We had a staffing change, rather large staffing change last week. So I'm scheduled to work 55 hours this week.
And yet she still
Bless
shows
your
up
heart.
to help us out tonight.
Thank
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other than that, I still pogo.
There you go.
But you
Nice.
Didn't, you didn't hear that from me.
It's our secret.
Okay.
I made a run out to the East Coast and back, and I was supposed to leave tomorrow, and that may or may not happen depending on the coronavirus. Honestly, I can't go into where or when, but the load I had scheduled is not going to leave for at least a week because of the virus, and so we'll see what happens tomorrow. I've been riding motorcycle today, which is uber cool. It has been warm enough, and I just enjoy getting out on the bike. And in a related note, it is not yet live, but it will be soon. I'm going to have you check out butdiditKillThem.com. We're going to be doing a fundraiser for the Second Amendment Foundation this fall, just before Gun Rights Policy Conference, and that's going to be the website where the fundraiser is housed. And we're just the website just got purchased yesterday. The domain has not been built. I haven't done any website building to it yet, but the basic thing is I want to raise about $11,000 for the SAF, and that's where it's going to get done. Just been carrying every day where I can, when I can, and doing my normal stuff. We had an AmCon conference call, a lot of good stuff coming along with AmCon, and just living the dream, man. Just living the dream. So, training classes. We still, at this moment, have the John Correa Active Self-Protection class in May, the last weekend in May. Go ahead and check that out at activeselfprotection.com if you're interested in coming up here in May for some training classes. John's a fantastic instructor, and I cannot wait to see what he has to say. Anybody else have training classes they want to pump?
No, I'll just have to change the date on them if I did. So.
Okay.
The big one that we have is our Mark McYoung Genamique course is still on. It is just postponed and rescheduled for November 21st and 22nd. There's still space in that class, and they're committed to coming out. That's part of why we moved it out so far, was to ensure that they're going to be able to complete that class in 2020 as best anybody can anyway.
All right. Well, I am going to come over here to the computer, and I'm going to pop this up and move it so the people on Facebook can see the fantastic webpage for the Self-Defense Radio Network. That is where all the shows on the network reside at sdrn.us. And you can see and by the way, there's at least one coming, and I can announce that the show Guns Guide to Liberals has agreed to come on the network. They'll be joining us here very shortly. But there's 12 other shows up there right now that you can see. Mine for Survival, Eye on the Target Radio by somebody, Amanda and her brother, I think. Anyway, Self-Defense Gun Stories, of course, us. A lot of great shows on the network. You can subscribe and listen right off the website. Go ahead and go over to sdrn.us and check it out. We are going to step aside to break. When we come back, we've got our guest, Alan Gottlieb, who's been sitting patiently for the entire show, waiting for us to get to him. We're going to be talking to him about how busy they've been since this whole coronavirus thing started and how they've been protecting our rights. We'll get to that right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. JPFO.org.
And welcome back to the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. Joining us tonight, Alan Gottlieb. Alan is with a couple of fantastic organizations. He is with the Second Amendment Foundation, who puts on the Gun Rights Policy Conference every fall, and also the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. Alan, I wanted to bring you on tonight and talk about the whole country has gone about nuts with this coronavirus thing. And a lot of state and local governments have really done some serious overreaching. And you guys, Rob Morse, when I first met him and we were talking about the SAF, he said that the SAF is kind of like the old FedEx commercial. When you absolutely positively have to sue everybody in the room overnight, you go to the SAF. Well, you guys had not actually had to file a lot of lawsuits, although you have, but just threatening. You've gotten some things done.
Thank you, Paul, for those kind words. Yeah, I guess we have. It's been quite a brutal 10 days or so at the Second Amendment Foundation. First of all, our offices have been closed down, as you know, in the state of Washington, even though we have 3 or 4 employees showing up every day, because they're sort of essential because they do news and media things and some of our media outlet stuff out of the office. But it started for us with New Jersey, where we filed suit against New Jersey when they did 2 things. They shut down all the gun stores, but then they went a step further, and the State Patrol shut down the whole background check system for the state, which in New Jersey, the only way anybody can transfer a firearm is through a licensed dealer. So you can't loan one to somebody, you can't sell one or give one to somebody in time of emergency like we're going through right now. And they shut both of them down. So that was our first suit that we filed. And that, of course, backed the governor of New Jersey down, and they opened up the gun stores, and then they finally opened up the background check system, which is way backlogged, to say the least. So it's not quite caught up yet, but it's getting there. That suit triggered a bunch of other jurisdictions to back off, like the governor of Pennsylvania, essential because he was going to get sued by us next, and he knew it. We were ready to file suit and had it all prepared in Delaware. And the governor of Delaware, the attorney general, looked at the suit and said to the governor, "You've got to change your policy." And so Delaware backed off. We filed in Wake County, North Carolina, where we had a county sheriff not only invoke the fact that you couldn't, open your store and sell guns and ammunition, or you could leave your house with your firearm, and for that matter, he stopped issuing concealed carry permits. It was backlogged on that to begin with, so lots of people couldn't get their permits. That suit was successful as well. They backed off on the gun stores, and they promised us to back off on the concealed carry permits and start issuing those and get caught up within a 7-day period. Our suit is still pending in court, making sure that they abide by what they said they do. But that was pretty monumental. And then California, where we've got, I guess, 2 different actions going on that I think it's a little over 20 different jurisdictions we're suing in total. We call one Southern Cal and one Northern Cal. The Southern Cal one also includes the governor of the state, who issued an order saying that counties and cities could quote unquote shut the gun stores down if they chose to, as being non-essential, but he didn't do it statewide. But he gave this very vague policy statement out to the counties, cities, for what they could or couldn't do, which didn't make any sense, particularly constitutionally. And so we filed against a bunch of, the biggest one being Los Angeles County, with their sheriff there then finally backed off before he could be heard in court. And today, because he backed off, we weren't able to get our temporary restraining order against him because they've backed off a bit. But the county council in Los Angeles removed him as being head of the emergency response stuff because he backed off on the gun stores, but they're being sued as well. And then the Northern California one's very interesting because that's, I think, got roughly about 17 jurisdictions from the city of San Jose to Pleasanton, California, to other cities and counties in Northern California, which, of course, is the hub for anti-gun activity in California. And so we're suing lots of people there. In Washington State, it's a similar situation. We have our suit prepared. We have our plaintiffs, everybody online. The governor closed the gun stores by order, but hasn't enforced it. The gun stores in Washington State decided, well, if you're not coming and locking our doors, we're staying open. So our suit's not ripe to file because you can still buy guns and ammunition in Washington State. And so we've got the governor sitting there saying you can't open, but is refusing to enforce the laws, his executive order, which means we can't quite go to court yet. And then any minute now, maybe today, if not tomorrow morning, I think we're filing suit, we're ready to file a suit in the state of New Mexico, which has done similar stuff to shutting gun stores down. Now there's really, I think it's about roughly 5 states that we have problems in, New York and Massachusetts being 2 of the critical ones. And we're looking for, putting our suits in place and plaintiffs together for those as well. So it's been unbelievably busy in the last 10 days or so.
I do want to remind our viewers on social media, if you're watching live, you can comment on the video and we'll ask Alan your question. Alan, one thing I want with the massive number of lawsuits that are happening with this, like you said, the Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, the most populous states are also the ones having arguably the biggest problem with coronavirus, and yet they're also having huge spikes in gun sales when the stores are already open.
In fact, we've seen something like, I think it was a 400% increase in gun sales up through last week. And then last week, there was another 80% jump in gun sales across the country. In fact, yesterday, Sunday in California, the state does their own background checks through their Department of Justice, and the system failed for some reason. We don't know if it crashed because of volume. We don't know if it had mechanical problems. We don't know if the state decided to shut it off so people couldn't buy guns. But the system in California went down for both guns, and you have to go through that background check in California to buy ammunition as well. So guns and ammunition both, we had a problem at every licensed dealer in the state of California yesterday. And yesterday we tried to get a hold of the Department of Justice, and they weren't answering telephones. And I don't know if our offices have been able to communicate with them today to find out if the system is back up yet or not. It's been a busy day.
All right, well, Amanda, I think you have a question up in show notes. I think it's very pressing. And I think your microphone's muted.
There we go. Yeah, of course. It's like I'm a professional or something. So hey, Alan, I want to take you off topic just a little bit, though it is to me the topic, which is Supreme Court. And right now, the Supreme Court has announced that they're not taking in-person testimony, and so they're only going to rule and look at things as you submit the documents to it. So is there any impact to any of the Second Amendment stuff that's going on that's at the Supreme Court right now, or are we still waiting for New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus New York City?
Well, Amanda, it's hard for me to answer that because obviously they're not doing oral arguments at this point, and they've slowed everything down. And of course, the Supreme Court, there's lots of cases that get appealed to the Supreme Court, and they can only hear less than 1% of what is put before them to start with. And now they're dealing with an extra long backlog, and now that the coronavirus is slowing them down even more. We're still waiting for the decision on the New York case. The Second Amendment Foundation has 4 cases pending cert petitions before the U.S. Supreme Court right now as we speak, and a lot of them coming up coming up. It's hard for us to, I never would envision 4 cases before the High Court at one time, but that's an awful lot. And, I don't know if they choose to hear all 4 or just pick one of the 4, but before you know it, we may have 6. So it's getting to be scary times to get our cases heard before the court with all this happening. I don't really know. They haven't advised our attorneys directly that they want anything more from us. All our briefing is in on all those cases. Actually, on 3 of them, 1 of them is not. But no dates for oral arguments have been set. We did have oral arguments set in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals on a case coming out of Texas, and that one has been postponed. We need to get it. We don't know when it's going to be rescheduled yet. So things are slowing down in the courts. It's affected all the cases we just recently filed as well, because there aren't as many clerks of the court, being present. You file the cases, and the courts don't respond as quickly. And we're trying to get temporary restraining orders and trying to straighten things out at least on a temporary basis before the cases can actually be fully heard. It's putting a little crimp in our style a little bit already.
Alan, you've had states like New Jersey, Illinois, who both demanded background checks and then didn't process them. That's been an ongoing problem. Recently, Florida during the quarantine said, yeah, we're not processing concealed carry apps. You have so many people you'd like to sue. You have to do triage and go, okay, these are our resources. These are the cases we think are best likely to yield the decisions we need. Wow. Talk to me about what the Second Amendment Foundation would like to do.
Well, everything you said there, it really hits home to me, because right now, in particular with the coronavirus and unemployment starting to skyrocket and people not having incomes, the first thing they do is discretionary donations is what goes first. And we're worried about having the funds to keep these lawsuits, alive and going, as well as file new ones. How we pick and choose? Well, let me talk about. You mentioned Florida, so let me delve into Florida a little bit. In Florida, the concealed carry permits are given out by the Department of Agriculture, and the Director of Agriculture basically suspended giving out permits or renewals. And we haven't sued there because there's a little caveat in the law. He suspended it for 30 days, both issuing new ones and renewals. And the problem is that the state, if they don't issue your renewal and you applied for it, at this juncture, they have 90 days to issue it to you, as well as 90 days to issue a first permit to a new person. So you suspend the process for 30 days, and in statute they already have 90 to begin with. It's a little hard for you to sue because there's still a 60-day window. So we have to wait another 60 days roughly, to determine if we were able to sue the state of Florida or not. The governor has interceded there a bit and is trying to get the Department of Agriculture to, up to speed so the permits get given out. Part of the department is saying is it's not that we don't want to give them out, but the demand all of a sudden has quadrupled on us, and we don't have the staffing to be able to handle it. Part of the problem all around the country right now, in delays in NICS checks, as well as the states who do them directly, the demand is so high right now for guns and ammunition that the system is being slowed down, not necessarily intentionally in a lot of cases, but just because it's just not workable. What I find to be really interesting, Paul, and for the rest of you, this is interesting. As you probably know, the vast majority of the gun sales happening right now are all new first-time buyers.
Right.
And all those new first-time buyers are discovering all of a sudden that we've been told it's as easy to buy a gun as a loaf of bread, that's not really the case anymore. And there's waiting periods. The background checks don't come back when they're supposed to come back. Waiting periods are going on longer than they're supposed to go on to begin with. And all of a sudden you realize that, hey, I can't get this gun. I want to protect myself when I might need it. And these laws are a lot more stringent than people led me to believe. And a lot of those first-time buyers are Democrats. And they've supported a lot of candidates who haven't supported gun rights at all. This is becoming a very interesting learning lesson for a lot of Americans.
Boy, I hope they learn the lesson. A shame it would take this to teach it to them.
Yeah, it's like, you and I, all of us are prepared. We have guns, we have ammunition. So these things get shut down, it doesn't affect us so much, which brings me to the other point. For a lot of these lawsuits we're filing, we can't go to our traditional members and supporters to be plaintiffs because they already have guns and ammunition. We need to find people who are trying to buy them for the first time and are being denied the right to be able to buy a gun or ammunition for self-protection. So finding our plaintiffs has been a little bit more difficult for us in all these suits the last couple of weeks.
Wow. John, you've got a question that you have up in show notes. I want you to go with that one because that's also a really important question.
Well, as a North Carolinian, I really want to thank you for joining with Grassroots North Carolina and the Firearms Policy Coalition to sue Gerald Baker, the Wake County Sheriff. Do you find it an advantage for SAF to join with a local state group in these lawsuits?
I'll tell you, I'm really glad you raised that question because we try every single time for a couple of different reasons to bring one of the local grassroots groups in as our local organizational plaintiff. And we do that because, one, they help us sometimes get some of our plaintiffs. And two, it's great for them for publicity purposes on the ground locally. I'm not in North Carolina, so I'm doing media, I'm doing it remotely. They're right there to get on the local TV stations and the local radio stations. And it's a great fundraising tool and helps build local grassroots groups in local areas because they can say they're doing something. So while we pick up the tab basically and pay for the case, it allows them to go out and get new members and fundraise and help build a grassroots structure. And it's boots on the ground is what it's all about. So we're really proud of getting local groups involved.
And let's see, Dana, you've got a question up in show notes.
Yes, the NRA and the NRA ILA used to activate gun owners to call their representatives. Are they still doing that, and does that make your work any harder?
It doesn't make our work any harder. I'm sure. I'm convinced and positive they still do that. They may not have been doing it as regularly as they were in the past because of staffing problems, where they've obviously scaled down their staff because of financial concerns with the organization. But they still definitely do it. We work closely with them in a lot of cases. You know, we've got them as a co-plaintiffs with us in our California cases as well, and we try to work with them, and they've had a hard time right now in piecing some of these things together, and so we're included them in our suits as well. We try to be, at the foundation, we try to be very inclusive and work with everybody.
All right, we are starting to get some feedback in on social media, and I'm going to have to move my microphone here. Rob Pincus sends in big positive long-term effects for 2A here. Not only individuals shifting their perspective, but also govs that are explicitly designating gun shops and ranges as essential, specifically for safety and security. That is one small benefit, is that in a lot of areas of the country, that gun stores, gun manufacturers, they're being and ranges are being declared essential. That's going to have long-term effects, don't you think?
Oh yes, and of course we've been lucky in some of our cases. You know, anti-gun governors in heavily blue states like Connecticut and Illinois came out pretty quickly and said they were essential and keep them open. Our lawsuits forced others, you know, like in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, to do the same. At this juncture, almost every state, I think it's 38 states now or something, have come out and said that they are essential, which is really important. Don't quote me on the 38 because I'm not exactly accurate. It's in that neighborhood. That's really, really important for the future. Cases being filed now, if we can get one of those cases in the United States Supreme Court, make the law of the land saying that, you know, that it's a fundamental right and therefore it's all essential, would be an extra big blessing. But down the line, some of these court cases have other long-term implications. You know, forget emergencies like this or national disasters, but what about when you have local governments deciding they're going to zone gun stores out of existence? Well, if they're essential businesses and it's an essential natural right. Yeah. It
could be huge for the ranges that are under attack in a lot of states where they're just closing down in insane rates. It could be huge for them.
Right. So what we're trying to do here is build some case law that can hit the next generation of lawsuits.
Very cool. We are coming up on break. I'm going to hang out for one more segment with us, Alan. We're going to step aside, and we'll be right back with more with Alan Gottlieb of the Second Amendment Foundation right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by Concealment Solutions. Jason Christensen makes the most comfortable inside the waistband holster on the market, bar none. The Black Mamba. Some of the other products offered are the Sidewinder outside the waistband holster and Python gun belts. Every product that Concealment Solutions makes has unsurpassed craftsmanship that shows in the fit and finish of the product. Visit concealmentsolutions.com to view all of the products available, and you can get 10% off your order when you enter the promo code POLITICS in the promo code box at checkout. That's concealmentsolutions.com.
Welcome back to the Polite Society podcast powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. We're still here with Alan Gottlieb of the Second Amendment Foundation and the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. Alan, I want to get back to social media. We got one more question that popped in. Rob Adams wants to know any gun groups worth supporting in South Carolina. And I got to say, when you do Gun Rights Policy Conference every fall, there's gun groups from almost all 50 states that show up no matter where this thing is happening. There's got to be, I can't think of a group off the top of my head from South Carolina, but there's got to be a local group there.
Yeah, there's more than one. The problem is South Carolina is not a state that gun rights are heavily threatened in, so the groups are smaller and not as well organized. I'm not coming up with the name of it off the top of my head, But if you go on the internet for gun rights groups in South Carolina and Google, they'll pop up. And so I'd urge your listener to go do that. But yeah, they're all over the country. It's really great. I mean, I love what's really great is we have a very heavy structure now, grassroots groups all over the country, to the point that it doesn't even matter almost if the national groups exist or not, because the grassroots groups can pretty much take care of the problems in their own areas. I love it.
All right, Rob, I don't know where you're going with this question, but I'm going to dare you to ask it. Go ahead.
Alan, we've seen governments who said life is too dangerous for us to have bureaucrats sitting at a desk. We've released inmates. We've changed sentencing rules so that there is effectively no bail. But we're not going to process your firearms applications. Should there be a safety switch on the Second Amendment where governments claim these are essential regulatory functions, and then when they fail to perform them, the citizens are left at risk?
Yeah, but your statement couldn't be any truer. That's why I support legislation that places that don't allow you to exercise your Second Amendment rights should be held liable under the law if you can't defend yourself because you have no means to do so. And those are the kind of laws I'd like to see passed all over, because that would, at that point, when the government's now become, financially liable, so to speak, then they're going to start saying, well, maybe we should liberalize our gun laws and allow people to protect themselves. So my answer to you is definitely yes. You mentioned, with the no bail, just releasing people, and then now people being released from prison or jail as well because of the virus. In New York City, crimes against businesses, robberies on businesses in the last 2 weeks have gone up 75%.
Wow.
And that's where nobody is denied bail. They go right out on the street, and now all the released people. 75% increase in robberies of businesses in New York City in the last 2 weeks.
There is a notion that, if you impose a gun-free zone, okay, as a store owner, you then have to protect the people you disarmed. And you're saying, wait a minute, if you're a state government and you disarm all the new want-to-be gun owners, you become liable for them. An interesting parallel.
Yeah, it's a very interesting parallel, and it's more dangerous when the governments do it, obviously, because they touch more people than just a small business does. At least as a consumer, you can choose, well, I just want to do business with you. I'll do business with your competitor. But you can't, if you live in New York State, as an example, you just can't always pick up and move to another state if that's where your livelihood or your family is.
Gotcha.
All right,
John, what you think?
Yep.
Well, I was going to say that, I think some of the earlier SAF cases like Bateman v. Purdue have had a greater impact than we originally thought of at the time. In North Carolina, we think that one of the reasons that Governor Roy Cooper, who is certainly not pro-gun, said that gun stores were essential from the start was because he remembered the Bateman case. He was the Attorney General at the time.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. And that's why when the sheriff in Wake County went rogue, so to speak, he was really off on his own. And the county attorney, knew there was a problem day one and tried to negotiate with this, and finally convinced the sheriff that you're gonna lose, and I can't really defend you in court. So they opened up the gun stores in the county, and then promised to catch up on the concealed carry permits, which he's way behind on, and he's just gonna have to do it. Supposedly, his concern was that he didn't want his employees infected by all the people that are backlogged coming in to concealed carry permits. So they set up a facility outside the sheriff's office itself just to go for the concealed carry permits. So they're trying to catch up on those, but they realized they were going to lose. Bateman had a giant effect because Bateman also a lot of other states took off their books the emergency powers laws dealing with guns and ammunition after Bateman was passed. Or what we're seeing right now would be a lot worse to begin with.
So I have a question. Longtime supporter, lifetime member, but how many cases do you have going on, and how do we keep track of all of them? It's crazy.
It's so crazy that I can't keep track of them. We're I guess around 35-ish right now, maybe 40. it's that many, because when a lot of them hang around for a long time, 3, 4, 5 years before they get fully resolved. So more and more keeps going on our plate. And just imagine if you're an attorney at a law firm trying to manage 40 litigation cases at the same time. It's rather difficult to just keep it to the top of your head. And that's what I do, sitting in a cockpit seat on managing all these. I can't even track them all. I got asked the other day on a national TV show about one case by name, and I couldn't even remember which one that one was, because you're dealing with multiple plaintiffs per case. This times 40. It's hard to remember which tell me what the state is or what the case is about. I'm okay. But give me the caption of the case, and half the time I'm not going to be able to tell you anymore.
Wow.
I've got one. Oh, go ahead, Amanda.
No, go ahead, Paul.
Well, I've got one that is kind of personal to me because it affects me every week that I wanted to ask about. It's been a couple years in the courts, and it's a case in Illinois where you're suing because only 4 states are allowed to file. Only residents of 4 states are allowed to file for out-of-state concealed carry permits issued by Illinois. And I drive through Illinois almost every week, and because I'm from South Dakota, not one of the 4 magic states, I can't carry outside the truck. I was just wondering if you would know off the top of your head where that one's sitting at.
We have one case from Illinois that now is a cert petition to the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm not sure if that's the one, or if it also deals with concealed carry. We have a situation in Illinois where you can be licensed to teach the concealed carry classes in Illinois, but if you're for out of state, you can't get the permit yourself. So we have out of state people teaching the classes in Illinois, but they can't get the permit themselves. I'm not remembering if it's your case or that case that's the one before the Supreme Court right now.
It is that case. It's Culp.
Culp. So Culp's the one that references what your concerns and your needs.
Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that one is before the court. We have filed it. We have briefed it. I believe we're waiting for the state to respond to our briefing, and then the court will have to then set a date for oral arguments. I think that's where we are on Culp.
Okay.
And talk about using your strength of local co-plaintiffs to find just great people. You had someone in the military, obviously from out of state, can't get an in-state residency. He's a firearms instructor teaching the military and can't get a permit in-state. Beautiful.
Yeah, we've got great plaintiffs. We work very, very hard to find the perfect plaintiffs for these cases. It's been a little harder this last 10 days when we're filing so many suits at one time to find the absolute perfect plaintiffs. Like example, the one in New Mexico would have got filed today, but we're trying to have the lead plaintiff be Hispanic. Since the governor's Hispanic, we'd like to have Hispanic name against the governor's name. And so we have somebody, but they haven't signed off legally on being the plaintiff yet. And so that one hopefully will get filed tomorrow. But it's been very difficult on a quick basis to be able to find the right plaintiffs in the right places in the last 10 days. But we go out of our way to try and find the perfect plaintiff.
Yep, that's so amazing. It's kind of like you guys play legal chess, and
it's exactly like.
I mean, yeah, because you're just trying to match everything, and it's pretty cool. And the more we talk to you, the more respect we've got for you, for your team of lawyers, and for everything that SAF does. So, Alan, I really want to give you an opportunity for you to do an infomercial. Tell folks how they can support you, how they can join SAF, how they can donate, how they can help you be supplied in the funds that you need to be able to defend all the Second Amendment rights across the country when you're called upon to do it.
Yeah, well, like it or not, for us, dollars are legal ammunition to be able to, fire the bullets in these court cases. So saf.org, and at saf.org, you can either donate or join. You can choose to be a donor or a contributor. It's really frustrating sometimes for us to fund these cases, but it's also frustrating sometimes just being in the courts, Amanda, because sometimes you have ruled by man, not ruled by law, and some of these judges just go off and be crazy. You know, the most perfect case, the perfect plaintiffs. You know, you're so solid on legal ground, and then you have a judge who rules against you just because they hate guns. So again, it's sdf.org to help us and support us, and I personally appreciate it and thank all your viewers and listeners.
Our pleasure.
Amen.
You bet.
Absolutely, and I want to point out that lawyers aren't free, not at this level. The amount of work that goes into these lawsuits, everybody thinks, well, the lawyers are doing it pro bono. I'm sure they wish they could, but the costs.
They need to live indoors. You know, those lawyers need to actually live in a house and drive a car and eat store-bought food. So
if I can jump in on that, I don't like paying lawyers any more than anybody else does. So all of our lawyers discount their rates to us. They don't do it for free, but they discount their rates. And usually what happens is if we win these cases, and in most of the time these cases are Section 1983 cases under federal law, depriving people of their civil constitutional rights under the color of law. And if we win those cases, the attorneys then can go to court and get the jurisdictions to pay their full going rate. So they take some risk along with us.
And one last thing, and I'll let you go because we're coming up on break again. But I know with everything going on with coronavirus and half the country shut down for an indefinite amount of time, I don't know if Gun Rights Policy Conference is going to happen live in person this year or not. But I do want you to plug the Gun Rights Policy Conference for whenever it happens the next time, because that is the biggest energy boost I get all year.
Oh, yeah.
Me too. We're scheduled for late September. I think September 18th through 20th, roughly, that weekend in Orlando, Florida. It's still on. We're still planning on holding it in Orlando, and hopefully we'll be able to. And if not, we may have to figure out how to do it virtually, and we may need your guys' help to make it happen. But one way or the other, Gun Rights Policy Conference will come off, and we're doing everything we can to try to make sure that that happens in person. So again, if people wanted to register and find out information about it, it's on saf.org on the website. It's all there, and we'd love to have your listeners and viewers attend.
Very cool. Well, thank you again for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute honor to have you on here.
Hey, it's been my pleasure. Thank all of you for all you do. I really appreciate it.
We are going to step aside to break, folks. When we come back, we'll get to our news segment, and guess what? It's about the coronavirus again. We'll be back with that right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Givens, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
Hey, and welcome back. This is the news segment of the Polite Society podcast powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. We're doing, last week it was entirely freeform news, and it's going to be largely that way again this week. If you want to comment on anything in the news, just go ahead and comment on Facebook, and we'll get your comment up, and we'll talk about it on the air. One thing that was in the news, the topic list, was, look over here again, was cheaper than dirt price gouging, and I kind of put a comment in the show notes. In other words, in other news, water is wet.
Right.
It's yes, cheaper than dirt. You significantly raised their prices, and that happened the last 3 ammo scares as well. This is not huge news. But overall, when you can get ammo, prices are up. But I haven't seen really a shortage of firearms, just ammo. What about you guys?
Yeah, I agree about ammo. I think you're going to see prices come up a bit. I talked to Anthony with Lucky Gunner over the weekend, and some of the stuff was being made overseas and we're just not getting it, like Fiocchi 9mm. He was also saying that some of the plants are being closed or have to close due to infection. So you're not going to find everything. If 9mm is what's selling, that's about all that's going to be produced. That and 223 and maybe 308. So if you're after 5.7 or even 45, you're going to be out of luck for at least for the foreseeable future.
Well, I agree with that, because one of the things that happens is that they've got a production schedule that says I'm going to do it in this kind of a rotation, and so maybe the not so common ammos only get manufactured twice a year because of demand, and so it's not scheduled to be run again until July. And so if the demand hits, it just is going to clear off the shelves, and then it's going to sit and be like that. But I have one comment to say about like Cheaper Than Dirt or any of the unnamed that are price gouging. In the American economy, if we're not talking about things that are truly medically necessary, then guess what? It's going to be self-modifying. If they raise their price, everybody's just going to be like, okay, I'm not shopping there. I'm going to shop someplace else.
Or it'll motivate the people that need it more to spend the money and the people that don't to not.
Right. So it makes it available still. So I'm not one to really have a huge heartburn unless it's something that people absolutely have to have, like air and water, and then they raise the price. Other than that, I think that it should be self-modifying.
We found stores who did not price gouge on medical masks, and they're sold out.
Right.
So if you wanted some, they're unavailable at any price.
And sold out to who? To people who genuinely needed them? That's the thing. Price gouging can regulate hoarding.
Right.
It's interesting right now we're having very cheap gas prices because there's just the opposite situation. You have an oversupply of oil and an under demand because people aren't driving. So it can go either way.
I heard on a news program I listened to, and I cannot remember which one, but I do remember this. For a while last week, natural gas was selling at negative 1.5 cents per cubic meter or something like that.
So they're paying you to take it.
Off their hands.
Because it's a byproduct of other things that they had to get moving through.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't see gasoline doing that. Of course, there's still people moving this stuff, but and Susan, you're still selling gas, right?
Oh yes, we are.
So, yeah, but and this is what I teased this last weekend because the show was so full, I never got a chance to mention it. The coronavirus, I believe, no kidding, is saving lives. And
in what way?
In a net, it absolutely is. Yeah, he's 100% right.
There are a lot less people driving, and auto fatalities are hugely down. I believe they're down more than coronavirus fatalities.
Okay. Don't start making reasons why we should continue this sort of antisocial, culturally damaging behavior.
I did.
Big words there, girl.
I did point out to somebody that this is going to have a cost that's beyond financial. When you unemploy lots and lots of people, they develop addiction and mental health issues. And right now we have more people committing suicide, way more commit suicide.
Oh my gosh, look at this. Look at this sociological impact. The lack of physical touch, knowing the benefit to human health that it provides. What are we doing to our culture by just eliminating things like giving people hugs and shaking hands?
Well, they say that there still is a lot of human touch because there's nothing else to do. There's human boredom.
Baby boom.
Oh God,
Family show.
You talking about the 9-month syndrome?
Exactly. That human touch. That one. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The new little boy named COVID and the girl named Corona.
Oh, I saw that. Oh, jeepers.
Yeah, I thank you guys for telling me. I have at least 5 rounds for each one of my guns, so I didn't know that I needed to shop for ammo. So I didn't know the prices had gone up. It's a shocker.
Looking at, I love your background. Looking at all those guns, man. If you got 5 rounds for each of those, dude, you can lend me a little ammo.
See, I've got my own personal reloading dealer there, with my brother Rob. I'm like, hey, you got the goods? You got the goods? So,
well,
yeah.
Amanda, it was so weird to hear Bob going, I'd like to sell some of my guns, but I bought them because they were so weird that I knew I had to reload to create the ammunition for them because you can't get them anymore. And I'm going, and you can't sell this thing unless it comes with a Dillon press.
Right, exactly. Oh, not even, because he talks about having to blow out the cases and do this and make this and that and trim this and it's like, okay, there's not a lot of people who want a Webley. I'm just saying.
No, they're cool.
Oh, I've got to play with those in the shop before. Those are neat.
I've heard of cases where people have gone into the gun shop, saw what ammo was on the shelf, and then looked to see if there was a gun to match it.
Right.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna give everybody a tip, and this is totally, I have no skin in the game other than I've been there. If you're looking for a gun that will always have ammo on the shelf and is a reasonable self-defense gun, think 40 Smith & Wesson. It's a little snappier than 9mm. It's every bit as effective as 45. I'll fight you on that one. And the ammo never goes away.
I disagree with you on the ammo never goes away.
Really?
There's been a run on it recently.
And it really depends. It's state by state as to whether it was a popular round or not, as to whether the ammo even comes into the state. And so it is a regional kind of a gun.
Okay, well, if you live in the upper Midwest.
Conditional caveat.
There you go.
Well, no, I was going to agree with Paul because when we had the last ammo shortage, 40 was about the only thing I could find. And fortunately, I have 9, 40, and 45, so, whatever you found would be useful.
Well, there's
I would agree that the trend has kind of leaned towards 9mm over the last few years. The popularity of 40 really dropped. It was a little bit of a fad there for a while, and now most people really have gone ahead and committed to 9 as a viable
because the
round.
quality of 9mm has improved so much that you don't have the recoil.
All the old arguments don't stand. Yeah.
Right.
Well, a lot of police departments have gone back to 9, so there's a lot of used 40s on the market now, police trade-ins.
A lot of good ones.
I'm not a fan of the 40 caliber at all. I have no idea why.
I hate 42, but
I don't like 42, but I do like the 40.
Well, I have to tell you, as somebody said, oh, they look on the shelf to see what ammo there is, and then they make sure that they've got the gun, and then they buy the gun to go with it. That really reminds me of like the states with their militias and their unofficial militias and their state militias. I keep telling my state, because Ohio has revised code that they've modified up to as recently as like 1997, talking about the official and the unofficial militia. And I'm like, you tell me what caliber you're going to supply ammo to the unofficial militia, and I will make sure that I am armed with it. So just share that with us, and we will stock what we need to have to match that ammo.
Paul, you talk about, thank goodness we have stocked grocery store shelves. If we thought there was a little bit of craziness in the world, toilet paper's, easy. Food and medicine, if that runs low, things are going to get violent quickly. I heard that there was a proposal to let truckers carry. That's been in the background forever.
Yes, it has.
Somebody brought it up. Anybody heard whether it got any traction?
No. It would have to go through the regular House and Senate, and there's less.
It won't
than
go.
zero.
It won't make it through the House.
Yeah.
Okay.
Make it through the Nancy.
So that's just with long haul or commercial truckers, correct? Because I know they've already made some changes in other areas like waste disposal. They have specifically been told that if they have a permit, they are strongly encouraged to carry on the job now.
Yeah, that's
Our garbage men?
Yes.
That would be just a
Make me smarter.
Washington
I
thing
don't
or
get it.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a Washington thing. All of the waste employees have been strongly encouraged, if they have a permit, to carry their gun on the job now.
There must
People
have
are
been some.
attacking them. People want to steal the garbage truck. What?
I have
must
no
have been
idea.
an incident.
I just know
Some
it's a thing.
incident. It's a thing.
It's a thing verified by an actual garbage man in Washington State.
Yeah, no, nationally, and I've said this on the show before, but it's always worth repeating because we're always, listeners come, listeners go. I'm sure we've got listeners that have come in since the last time I've said it. There's nothing nationally that prohibits you from carrying in a commercial vehicle. A lot of companies say there is. That's just because they don't want their employees doing it. So they kind of leave it off on the federal government, not saying, just saying, well, we're following federal regulations. I've read the federal
No, but it'll
regulations.
just get you fired. That's all.
Yeah, they're not there. There's nothing on the national level that prohibits it. You do and you must follow regulations in every state you travel through. And and if you are caught with a gun in your truck, your company can fire you if it's against their policy. So be aware of that. I used to drive, and since I drove for a company that I initially drove for when let me clarify this and be absolutely clear. The company I drove for allowed it. That company was leased to said that if they found a gun in your truck, you were instantly fired. And so it was a don't listen to my show kind of a thing. But there is no federal regulation that says you cannot carry in your truck. If somebody's telling you that, get out your little Federal Register book that's in every truck that you have to carry. Say, just point me to the regulation because it's not there. And look at that. We're at 14 minutes, 30 seconds into a 15-minute news segment. Anything
Good.
else?
Then I got just a little. Are we gonna come back to the news, or can I cheat one in?
Cheat one in.
Okay, you guys are have seen things I haven't seen. We've got 1 million new gun owners who probably are having a hard time going to the range or the gun store. Do we have good online curricula for these new gun owners? I found one guy who put up a page, because other than going to YouTube and saying, teach me about guns, anybody got recommendations?
NRA Basic Pistol is online.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen some YouTubers doing basics for beginners. Yankee Marshall's the first one that popped into my head when you asked the question. He's been doing, and there's a couple others. I mean, if you search for it.
I know somebody that you like, Rob, that has been doing regular IG live videos that are educational on multiple subjects every single day at 5 p.m. Pacific.
Okay.
That would be
someone that Rob likes? There's like
Yeah.
3 people in that list.
That's well, I was going to say
No,
that
that's
sounds like
Steve
fifth grader. I know
Fisher.
somebody you like.
Yeah, no concepts. Steve Fisher has been doing regular IG live videos. He did one on 1911s, red dot systems, shotguns. Gosh, I'm trying to remember what he's doing it on tonight. But yeah, he's been on regular 5 p.m. every day and announcing on his page what the topic's going to be and answering questions at the end. It's been working really well.
I thought he jumped off Facebook.
It's on Instagram, man.
Instagram. Thank you. Okay.
Instagram.
Silly Robert.
All right.
Yeah, he's on live right now. We're missing out.
I want
Thank
to.
you, Paul.
We've had several. I hadn't had a chance to pop over to look at social media, but we have had a lot of comments, and I'm going to extend the news segment a little bit so that I can stick those in there, and we can discuss them a little bit. Eric says truckers should arm up regardless. If things go south, so to speak, they will be major targets. And Eric, you're absolutely right. Security with a truck, first of all, it's more than a gun. Your security has to start before you leave the house. I could go hours talking about truck security, and most of the people that listen to the show just don't care because they're not truckers. But yeah, I believe all truckers should be able to be armed. And let me go ahead.
Hey, Belle. Eric has got a point on here too. He says that he bets that waste management guys are the targets of a huge homeless problem, and that may be the tie-in between arming yourself or not.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Makes sense.
Huh?
Yeah.
No,
Thanks, Eric.
And Ray says, I have a couple hundred rounds for I-2 or 3 for 2 or 3 calibers. I don't even have guns for. You never know when someone you may need something you don't
Bartering.
shoot.
Bartering. Smart,
I know, but
smart guy.
look, barter what you do shoot. It's kind of like, stocking up on something that you don't like. People who
But
stock
those
up
guys
on
don't
coffee
want to
and
give
don't
their
drink
own
it.
stuff away.
Buy a 9mm if you got a barter. Come on.
Well, I have or you have
Buy
magazines for
toilet
gun types
paper
you
if you want to barter. Come on.
I'll trade you 3 sheets of toilet paper for how many 9mm? All right.
All right. Last one here. Eric again says times like these will push folks to the video screen to supplement their training. And Rob and I had a telephone conversation about this late last week. And you may see something coming from us in the not too distant future. So
Teaser.
yes, absolutely. I'm a tease. Anyway, we're going to step aside to break, and you're going to get to hear from my beautiful bride, Susan, here in just a second when we go to the DGU segment. We'll get to that right after this.
Firearm Safety Institute is one of Northwest Illinois' premier firearm training companies. They provide superior firearm training to all levels of shooters. Gary Doherty has been a trainer and concealed weapons permit holder for many years. While living in Nevada, he carried legally and has the experience to train you to do the same. Firearms Safety Institute offers a wide range of courses designed to meet the personal needs of both seasoned shooters and those that are new to the world of firearms. If you are looking to apply for the Illinois Concealed Carry License, Firearms Safety Institute can provide you with the professional training that meets the state's requirements. Gary accommodates classes of all sizes and can provide individualized instruction if that is your personal preference. He's happy to work with you and your friends to arrange private classes and will come to your location and work around your schedule. If you would like to get your Illinois CCW or increase your firearm knowledge or skills, go to firearmsafetyinstitute.com to start the conversation. Mention the Polite Society podcast and receive a 10% discount on your training. Remember, that's firearmsafetyinstitute.com. Get your Illinois CCW today.
Hey, and welcome back to the Polite Society podcast powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. Here's our disclaimer that I should be able to read right off the top of my head, but because I've done it, 500 and some times. But I am going to go ahead and crank my neck over so I can say these discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The defensive gun use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Susan, I'm going to go ahead and toss this off to you. You got our first one out of Tulsa.
On a Friday afternoon late last month, a woman outside a North Tulsa shopping center opened fire on customers. Luckily for those customers, a good guy with a gun was nearby. Video from the scene reportedly shows the woman being involved in an earlier altercation. The suspect arrived at a medical marijuana dispensary. There were several people milling around outside the business, including the owner, who was speaking to a man in a truck. The truck was blocking a lane of traffic behind the owner's vehicle. Aside from that fact, there was plenty of room to maneuver in the lot. The woman exchanged words with those milling around from inside her vehicle, then pulled out and left. She returned about 3 minutes later. She pulled out a gun and opened fire from inside her car. A concealed carry permit holder returned fire. He told the responding officer that he shot her after she began shooting at customers. Tulsa police were called about 6:30 p.m. and found the woman had expired inside of her vehicle. The good guy was questioned at the Tulsa Police Department's Detective Division and was later released.
This is
I
sort of
take it he wasn't frequenting the shop then.
well, yeah. That's well. The first thing that strikes me is this sounds crazy. This sounds like a concealed carrier's walking across the parking lot and sees somebody start mass murder. Could you believe your eyes? You think, I got this gun for home protection. You know, I'll carry it with me just in general. Okay, mass murder in front of you. Will you believe it? And the other thing is, could you take a shot across a parking lot?
Yes, I teach a class that
You
prepares
teach a
you
class in
exactly
that.
for
Thank you,
yeah,
Val. You
Paul's
can.
taking it.
She does teach it, and I can.
Bless you. Well, but okay, these 5 million new gun owners, fellas, you can hit a pie plate at 6 feet. You probably can't take that shot at 35 yards. Know what you can do. And for some of our new gun owners, medical marijuana is a disqualifying factor to be a gun owner. Yes. You were about to jump on that, weren't you, Bill?
Well, I mean, that's the kind of weird part about this. I was surprised it ended the way that it did because my first thought was, what was he doing in the parking lot?
Right.
But, you know, I mean, I imagine some states are a little more lax on that than others. I'm sure it depends on what county you're in and all that sort of thing.
I think the 4473 asks.
Yeah, it
does.
does.
I know
Federal.
that. I'm saying as to whether or not someone is going to get in trouble in an incident like this.
Oh,
where
gotcha. Okay.
Whatever the little specifics were, all in all, it was a good deed done. People were saved, and maybe some other things were not discussed.
Gotcha.
But
yeah, you guys are ahead of our listener, Cornelius, who said the same thing. He couldn't have been a dispensary customer.
Yeah.
And have his concealed carry.
I'd not have gotten in trouble.
But let me bring this up. One of our when anything happens in the Southeast, when there's either the SHOT Show or if the GRPC is in the Southeast or Southwest, I'm sorry, Susan and I love to go to the Shooter's Grill in Rifle, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
It's been in the news before. It's an open carry restaurant. The staff there open carries. And we love to go and support them. And by the way, they've got dang good food, even though they don't pay me to say that. However, less than a half a block away, the last time we stopped, is a dispensary. So it doesn't necessarily mean, I mean, if it's a strip mall type thing, he could have been
Right.
there for anything
For the
business
fries.
in the area.
True. True.
Well, I have to say on this article, on this story, Rob and I covered this on our show, and one of the funny things is that there were several news articles written that blamed the concealed carry holder, as in headlines where a man kills woman in parking lot, not man stops potential mass shooter.
Right.
And
And the same thing would have happened if one of them had been of a certain ethnic background.
Right.
That was Tulsa World that did that.
that put that spin on it.
Oh, horrible. Yep.
Yeah, really, really bad spin. So it's craziness. Not that here's a good guy with a gun that rushes in to save the rest of the uninitiated public.
Oh, okay, Amanda, you just brought that up. Man with a gun rushes in. Okay, we got 5 million new concealed carriers. Unless you decided what to do a long time before you hear popping sounds walking across the parking lot, you will stand there figuring out what to do. By the time you get an answer, it's over.
Oh yeah, exactly. Because it needs to be a reaction, not an action.
Not a decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Susan, I was just pre-reading this next story. Wow, good luck.
Thank you. I think I'm going to need it. At 11:30 p.m., a 28-year-old suspect threw a brick through a glass porch window before trying to enter through a set of French doors. He was armed with a knife. Police were on their way after receiving a call about a man up a tree with a knife. While en route, 911 operators fielded another call from the homeowner to report someone trying to force their way into his home. The homeowner grabbed a pistol and demanded the intruder to leave. Instead, the man broke a second window with a barbell and entered the house. The homeowner fired one shot, which struck the intruder in the arm. He then grabbed his family and barricaded everyone inside a bedroom. When deputies arrived, they found the wounded Hood flailing around and bleeding all over the kitchen floor. After fighting with the deputies, he was able to run out the door before he fell 8 or 9 feet off an unfinished deck. He was apprehended and taken to the medical center for treatment for his gunshot wound. He was booked on charges of home invasion, burglary, disorderly conduct, and 4 counts of felony obstruction of a law enforcement officer.
I'm going to steal Rob's tagline here. I'm very curious what the toxicology report is going to say on this one. The guy, he's up a tree, and then all of a sudden he's down, and
breaking
he's
windows, he's breaking doors,
windows,
falling
climbing
off
in,
decks.
falling 8
Oh, I bet his
feet
slide off that
a
deck was epic.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Oh, wow. This guy, he had to be on some massive major
Pete, honey,
painkillers.
the toxicology report is going to read, honey, you're messed up.
Yeah, it'll have to come out with a big print edition so the guy can read it.
One thing I really like about this story is that after the homeowner fired his one shot, he grabbed his family and then barricaded everyone. Took the whole family, and they all went to a safe spot inside a bedroom. He did it right.
Yeah.
Well, you're right, John. That is good. My question, though, is where did he find a barbell outside the house?
It was on a screened-in porch.
Okay. So maybe something not to be left outside where people could use it to break windows.
The same old problem with leaving an axe in your wood pile.
Right.
It almost doesn't matter, just leaving the wood pile in the wood pile.
Yeah. All right. Well, that does wrap it up for our DGU segment. We're going to step aside.
Well, wait. I got to say this. I want to borrow Rob's other tagline.
Uh-oh.
Was he lucky or was he prepared? That's where I thought John was going to go about the homeowner grabbing his family and barricading and using his gun and stopping this lunatic from coming in. But okay, carry on.
He shot him with a 45, so they don't make a 46. Good job. In the arm, though? Come on.
Yeah, and last thing, and Cornelius chimed in on social media, says, taking a shot in the arm and still fighting the cops.
Yes.
He was high.
Ooh.
All right, that does do it for our DGU segment. I can't let Susan go yet because we've got an email to get to in the next segment, and we'll get to that right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off. Okay, welcome back to the final segment of the Polite Society podcast, powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. And to head off the emails, yes, I realize I ran the same ad twice. It was the wrong button. I'm sorry. But we did get the ad in for the Complete Combatant, our good friends Shelley and Brian Hill. And I'm glad we were able to get that in. So this is our final segment. It's our email and blog note segment. And we do have an email. If you want to get your email read on the air, email us at onair@politicsandguns.com, and we'll read it and we'll respond to it. And Susan, you want to take Alan's email?
Dear Polite Society folks, I enjoyed Dr. Johnny Dean's presentation and discussion on the current COVID problem in episode 536. And thanks for the discussion on my comments. This response does not necessarily need to be an on-air discussion, unless you choose to, but I would like those participants that commented, at least, to read my response. While Gary, who brought up the initial situation, didn't actually melt down, comments by others seem to border on derision, and that, from what I perceived, is a problem. Not Gary's attempt to provide information to those instructors. I'm always amazed when straw man arguments are brought up, fine versus gross motor skills, as a counterpoint, especially when that was never mentioned in my comment. I am well aware of the neurophysiology of motor skill development by medical training, and that all well-developed motor skills, right or wrong, follow the same developmental path. In addition, life-saving gun-handling motor skills must be learned to consolidate those skills into procedural memory, as contrasted with training with cognitive-based shooting drills, which primarily engages declarative memory without decision-making or information processing. Both can be integrated, but that is a rarity institutionally. My main point was, don't be so quick to belittle a particular technique that may not conform to the prevailing orthodoxy, especially if that technique is well practiced, learned to procedural memory, and works for that individual, especially if there is a justified neurophysiological or biomechanical basis for that technique. Just like we don't presently carry the first gun we purchased, I'm sure we have all changed or modified some of the gun handling techniques we first learned as we experimented and found what works best for us. Of course, if we see something that is unsafe, by all means we have an obligation to correct it. If you see someone using a technique different from yours, there's nothing wrong with inquiring why that particular technique is being used. We might even learn something new. We might also want to keep in mind Stephen Covey's fifth habit, Seek first to understand, then to be understood. As a footnote, I noticed the source for the research I referenced to illustrate a point was omitted in the readback, maybe to shorten my lengthy post, but it was included to show the point I was making was not pulled out of thin air, but rather had a sound basis in vetted research. An important point, by the way, that was never addressed. Carry on and train accordingly, Alan.
All right. I'm going to jump in.
All I got to say is, I guess I missed a show.
You missed a show.
I guess
Me
I
too.
missed what it is he's talking about. I'm sure I was there, but it's not ringing a bell specifically.
No clue.
This is this is an email that was read last week, and I'm not gonna. I would have to go pull the show and rerun the show, and I'm not going to go through all that. But he does have good. He does have some good points here in that. Where let me scroll back to it, and I got to crank my head over here.
Did somebody pile on and pick on Gary? That's kind of what I got out of that.
I was kind of getting the impression that it was everybody else that commented on it that was getting piled on. But I remember pretty lively discussions, but I don't remember anybody picking on anything that, I mean, hey, what it comes down to is there's a lot of things, and I used to run into this in midwifery all the time. There are a lot of things in the training industry that people think is okay because we should have all these options and be inclusive. But we all know after a certain point and a certain level of training that some things just aren't okay. They're not optimal. They're an impairment. They have such a ridiculously long list of limitations that they're not good. And we don't need to pretend like they are to make people feel better. I think that's damaging to those people that want to feel better instead of be better.
And I agree with you. I so agree with you on that, Belle. And policies and procedures evolve for a reason.
Exactly.
This, not to harken back to my day job, I work in clinical research. And why do we perform clinical research? So we can find out what works, what doesn't work, how we can improve, how we can make people better. And, Belle said it very eloquently and with few less words than I did. But it sounds like somebody has their feelings hurt.
Well, it's the same sort of attitude we get from people when we explain to them that it's not a good idea for them to carry a gun without a round in the chamber. They want to go into, it's my choice and it's a viable technique. And well, I'm sorry, but no, it's just not. It's not.
But my Serpa is a good holster. No,
it means you lack confidence in your skills and your tool, and you have more work to do. It doesn't mean you're bad. It doesn't mean you're stupid. It means that you haven't got to a place where you've built the confidence necessary to do what it is you're trying to do correctly.
So what you're saying is if I go to VersaCarry and ask them to sponsor the show, you might have a problem with that.
Bye.
Well, actually, they're making masks right now.
Yeah, they're making posters. Yeah.
Like I said, I used to run into this in midwifery all the time, and it's why I quit the industry, because in order to provide good care, you had to tell people that all their choices were okay. And I'm sorry, it's not okay for a perfectly healthy woman to get an elective C-section because she doesn't want to push. That's not okay, and I'll never tell anyone it's okay. Just like I won't tell anyone it's okay to carry a firearm that's unreliable, that's an unreasonable caliber, that's not conducive to training, or that's going to put their life in more jeopardy by relying on it.
I'm with you all the way there.
Preach it,
sister. Now.
Say amen.
You're right.
Hallelujah.
Amen. Woo.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on
we
here.
We just lost a listener, but Belle's right.
But I do want to go back to one thing he said, though. I let me move my microphone here so I can look.
I'm not picking on anybody. I'm just saying.
He says my main point was don't be so quick to belittle a particular technique that may not conform to prevailing orthodoxy, especially if that technique is well practiced and works for the individual. I'm going to say this. The very first time I took a professional firearms training course was Kathy Jackson. And I was very practiced in what I was doing, and it worked well for me. And was dangerous as all hell, and I'm glad she slapped the hell out of me. She didn't do it physically, but she beat me up verbally and publicly in front of the class, and I'm glad she did. Because what I was doing, quite honest, was dangerous. So,
well, let's take the dangerous out of it. I mean, I think he's got a point, and then maybe he's missing a point. I think there's a little bit of both. One is you can do something until you get really good at it, till the absolute extremes of the physical abilities of doing that thing, whatever it is. But it may be that if you had adjusted or done something differently, that your then abilities would be 10 times greater or 10 times faster or 10 times quicker to draw or access or whatever. And then if you practice those, in the beginning, you were probably better at the thing you had been doing. But if you then practiced it the best way, then over time you could meet, exceed, and surpass your best abilities with the first way.
Amen.
So let's take that analogy and apply it this way. If you have a top of the line shooter, say like Rob Latham, okay, and you put the crappiest POS gun in his hand that, or something that functions completely nonsensical. Say like you give him like a Beretta Tomcat. That's not even like a bad gun mechanically. It just, the way it runs is ridiculous. And then you expect him to perform a like high level USPSA stage. Well, he may be able to perform it at a level with that gun that is so far beyond what somebody else can do with a Glock 19, maybe. But does that mean that it's the optimal way to do it, or is he better off just, putting a 1911 in his hands?
Or a Glock 19.
There you go.
Yeah, whatever. He's a Springfield guy. I was trying to be fair.
I'm just teasing.
And one comment from social media, Eric says, hopefully Versacary's masks are more useful than their holsters.
Well, their heart is in the right place.
Yes, it is.
So kudos to them for that.
All right.
I'll stick with Shelley's mess.
All right, let's go ahead and we're going to go off and do our regular segment on blog posts. Rob, you've been busy over at Slowfax, man.
Thank you, Paul. The usual characters revealed themselves during this Wuhan virus epidemic. Government officials asked citizens to limit their contact with others. Great. But some government officials went way beyond that. They closed roads, released jail inmates, refused to arrest or prosecute suspects, closed gun stores, and refused to process firearms applications. It's precisely during such an emergency that we face today that we need government officials to stay within their authority and not 1 inch beyond. That article is called "There is No Emergency Shutdown of the Second Amendment." My articles are up at Clash Daily, at AmmoLand, and at my blog, slowfax.wordpress.com. John, I like what you're doing at your blog, No Lawyers, Only Guns and Money.
Thank you, Rob. Grassroots North Carolina has been pushing cities and counties to allow gun stores and ranges to remain open. They've been doing that with what they call fog letters, the fear of God. In other words, you must declare gun stores essential or we're going to sue the pants off you. The last holdouts, Greensboro and Durham, have folded, and people can still shop at these essential stores. That and more is at onlygunsandmoney.com.
All right, and we're going to go ahead and set the show to bed there. And before we do, I want to remind everybody about the Facebook listeners group. Just go to Facebook and search for Polite Society Podcast Listeners. We've been getting new listeners in every week, and a lot of good discussion is going on there. So that does wrap up another episode of the Polite Society Podcast. I'd like to thank Alan Gottlieb for joining us today. So for Amy, Tracy, Belle, Kat, Dana, Gary, John, Rachel, Susan, Grant, Amanda, Monty, and Rob.
Until next time.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.